Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Dr. Hannah McRae. I'm a clinical psychologist and head of digital programs here at Hello Sunday Morning, and we are the world's largest digital community for alcohol change. We're really excited to be here today, kicking off our webinar series, which is generously sponsored by Bupa Foundation Australia. And across the series, we are hoping to empower people to make informed choices about their drinking. We're going to be looking at the connection that alcohol has with emotional health, physical health, mental health, and we'll be sharing some expert tips and insights and hearing some real stories from real people who have been there and made some changes to their drinking. I would just like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that we're meeting on today. So I'm actually based in Sydney, so I'm on Gadigal land, and I'd just like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. I'm really excited to kick off with our first webinar, which is called Rethinking Drinking, and it's all about what you can expect, what change actually looks like. And I'm talking about whether you're wanting to quit alcohol completely, maybe cut back or moderate your drinking, maybe even just take a break. And we're going to be exploring what that might look like today. We do have a question and answer box on your screen. Please feel free to submit any questions or even some reflections as we move through the webinar. We will have some time at the end to answer some of those questions and have a bit of discussion. But I'm really, really lucky today. I'm joined by three wonderful expert panelists in Fiona, Rebecca, and Jamie. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. Now, they are experts in rethinking drinking because that's exactly what they've done. They all have their own personal experience of making changes to their drinking. So we're going to get straight into it, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves and their experience of making change to their drinking. Beck, I'm going to pick on you first and ask you to introduce yourself. And maybe just tell us a little bit about what your relationship with alcohol is like today and maybe what it used to be like and how it's changed.
Sure, and good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Beck. I'm going to give my age away. I was a 70s baby, and drinking was big in the 70s. So I grew up in an environment where there was lots of drinking, there was lots of partying. Unfortunately, in my household, a lot of that led to arguments, both physical and verbal. So my relationship with alcohol was kind of tainted early on. I saw it as something that fueled arguments in the household, but also for me, I was one of those very awkward teenagers. I started using alcohol as an escape. I started using it as giving me a bit of an alter ego, someone that I felt that I wasn't. So it was giving me false confidence. And that kind of continued throughout my life. I never found 30 plus years a healthy relationship with alcohol. Instead, as I got older, it just accumulated. It just got worse. My lack of control, my unpredictability, just kind of it just, we never knew where it was going to go. And in the end, after 30 plus years of battling that, I kind of got to the stage where I didn't care whether I woke up or not, whether I woke up or not after a night out. And I thought it doesn't get much darker than this, getting to that place where I just didn't want to face the next day because I knew how bad I was going to feel, the shame and the regret and that continual battle that I had. And so I knew that I needed to make a change. And I won't go too much into the change, but I will say my relationship with alcohol now is that I'm nearly 2,000 days sober. I feel the best I've ever felt in my life. Yeah, mentally well, and yeah, just sitting in a beautiful place, and so happy to share some of this with all of you. So I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you so much, Beck, and congratulations. What an incredible achievement. Thank you for sharing that with us. Fiona, I'll throw over to you next. Would you mind sharing your story of change with alcohol?
Certainly, thank you. So I quit drinking in January 2013, so it's been 13 years. Really hard to kind of imagine that. So drinking, very similar to Beck, like alcohol was like just a constant companion, and it was I mean, I really identified as like the party girl and, the life of the party and all the rest of it. But it was actually really just a mechanism for covering up and filling a big gaping hole in me that I didn't actually realise existed until I stopped drinking. So I'd actually kind of got to a point in my life where literally there was not one aspect of my life that was functioning in any kind of healthy way. And I tried to give up multiple times, and there was just, I knew I needed to make a pretty significant life change in breaking up from my in the relationship I was in and the father of my two children. And I was actually really scared that it was going to get really nasty and messy, and I wanted to be able to move through that period of time not drinking. And so it was kind of came down to it's now or never. And I found Hello Sunday Morning at that point in time. So yeah, I have been I don't actually even think about it anymore. I just, I've always just identified myself now as I don't drink, and that's been really empowering as well. So yeah, so thank you for having me here today, and welcome everyone.
Thank you so much, Fiona. Jamie, over to you.
Hi everyone, my name's Jamie. I think as a young man I kind of lacked confidence, and then when I became of drinking age, alcohol gave me that confidence that I always kind of desired. Even though it was false confidence, I kind of didn't realize that. And I always had a very sort of on and off relationship with alcohol. I was very involved in sport, specifically boxing and martial arts. And when I sort of finished school, I was either training really hard or I was partying really hard. It was either one or the other. There was no real in between for me. And I didn't really see anything wrong with that when I was younger. But then as I got older, that got progressively worse. Um, then when I stopped competing and stopped training as hard as I was really lost. I was a little bit lost in life, and that's when it started to really get worse, and slip. And I found that I could always, I don't know if it was back to my boxing days, but I could always stop. I could always stop. So I could flip the switch and stop, but I just couldn't moderate. I tried everything I could to moderate, like you name it. I tried it, light beer and certain days off and everything under the sun. Um, but I found the only real way I could really moderate was by taking a month off alcohol. So I did like dry July, Feb fast. I do normally 2 or 3 a year, months off. And in those months off, I found everything improved. My sleep, my performance in the gym, my friendships, my relationships, more money in my bank account, like everything. I often say that if make a supplement that gave you all those benefits, it'd have been the most popular supplement in the world. And it was through endless repetition of doing that I kind of just came to the conclusion that my life is better this way. And after the months off alcohol, I'd say to myself, I'm gonna moderate, and I could never do it. It just, if anything, it kind of got worse. So it was just kind of on that, in one of those months off, I discovered Hello Sunday Morning and Daybreak, and that kind of led me on a journey that I'm on now. And yeah, now I'm 4 years sober, and it's the best decision I've ever made. That's all I can say.
Congratulations and thank you so much, Jamie. Thank you all of you for sharing that. I want to come back to something you mentioned, Fiona, in your introduction, and you sort of referred to the fact that it took you a couple of attempts. And I think I want to acknowledge that and really normalize the fact that that's absolutely right. It can take a couple of attempts. We actually know from the research, on average, it takes about 5 attempts before someone meets their change goal. And I'm just curious to know if that was the same for anybody else. So Beck, did you find for yourself as well, did it take a couple of attempts?
Absolutely. I first started to try and give up 15 years ago. So it took me 3 attempts before I actually gave up. And it's really interesting, actually, because I found slipping back into the drinking scene was easier than slipping out of the drinking scene. It was almost like everyone was like, oh, cool, she's back. Whereas when you step away from it, that's when you get more questions and you start to feel a little bit more like the minority still. But yeah, 3 attempts before this one finally stuck. And I think you just have to be ready. And a lot of it comes down to the people you surround yourself with, the space that you're in, and just the readiness of a change in life, really.
And so what I want to maybe shift to talking about now is, yes, it can take multiple attempts, and that's because it's hard. Change is hard, and it is very, very rarely a smooth road. There are many ups and downs along the way, hence even the name of this webinar. And so I want to talk now about some of those specific challenges that can come up along the way. Fiona, I'm going to throw to you here. Can you talk about maybe some of the challenges that came up for you across those multiple attempts that did make it that bumpy road?
Yeah, so I remember I found I learned about like goal setting like in 2012, and I wrote down, a whole lot of goals that I wanted to achieve and stuff. And I'd set myself one of the goals was I'm only going to drink 2 to 3 times a week with two drinks at a time. And then I found this piece of paper towards the end of the year, and I'm like, that was just not even like a thing. And there was a lot of shame with that as well, sort of this knowing that there's a problem, knowing that I don't actually really like the fact that I'm drinking, knowing the fact the impact it has on the people around me, particularly my kids, and the shame of realising I'd sent emails or rung people and left messages or maybe even spoken to them, and not recalled what I'd said. I think that when you set a goal and then you don't achieve it, that can be really, really demotivating, and to really acknowledge that that is part of the process of change. And each time you fall, you learn something new. And, you sort of do start to understand where your weak points are. And, ultimately for me, I mean, I can't speak for the rest of the panel, but that's actually what led me to the point where it's like, actually this has to be like an all or nothing thing. There is not a point for me to be able to moderate here. Like I'm actually deluded to think that for myself, but I wouldn't have come to that realization had I not had all those failed attempts. So I just think it's really, it's shifting it that from feeling like failure to actually like, I've made a decision to do something, and I acknowledge that it might take me multiple times. Like Jamie said, how many day ones did you have, Jamie? And that's okay, because every day one you learn something new.
7. I'd 7 in the last 6 months before I quit. So and I posted them in Daybreak, so I can go back and look. And each time, I felt pretty bad afterwards, but I was like, nah, I'm getting back on my horse. I'm giving it another crack. I write in my journal, and I was determined. And I think I view quitting drinking as a skill, and you don't just know it straight away. You've got to practice, and you've got to learn, and you've got to take advice and do a bit of research and put a bit of work into it. And like any skill, like you practice it enough and it'll come.
Mm. Yeah.
I think that's a really nice way of putting it, practicing a lot. And Fiona, you were talking about you don't view it as a failure. I think I see a lot of the time people fall into the trap of viewing it as a failure. And, I've had a drink when I wasn't planning to, or had more than I was wanting to. And so now what's the point of going on? How do you get out of that headspace, and how do you bounce back from that? Maybe Jamie, we'll stick with you for this one. How do you bounce back from those moments and find that motivation and courage to keep going?
Well, I think for me, I was posting on Daybreak a lot when I quit, and everyone on there when I'd post, like I felt terrible, like, oh, I messed up again, and everyone would be like, don't worry about it, get rid of the shame, doesn't do you any good, and just focus on what you've learned and give it another go, And I think that sort of trying to separate the shame, or not dwell in the shame too much, and look at it objectively, and try and move forward from your lessons, And each time you find out more about your triggers, or what makes you vulnerable to relapsing, or to drinking again, or drinking too much. So I think trying to remove that shame, I think was a key for me, and also opening up, like communities like Daybreak are fantastic, where you can speak openly about it without that shame.
And Beck, what about for yourself? Did you have any, I guess, some people call slip ups or lapses, any moments where, things didn't go to plan for you?
Well, I think those three relapses definitely weren't on the radar, but I think at each time one of those happened, I didn't actually see it as a slip up. It's really weird. I just saw it as slipping back into society. What kept changing me was the fact that then my life became uncontrollable, my relationship suffered, and everything suffered, and it just was a slap around the head to remind me every time of, what, there's a reason that you keep trying to give up, and that's because you're not managing your life anymore. And like Jamie and Fiona, I use the Daybreak app as well. I think it's so important when you're stepping away from something like alcohol is to is to surround yourself with good people. Stay connected, because you can be really lonely, especially early sobriety, because you're kind of saying no to, I can't do this or I can't do that because I don't want any triggers and I don't want to put myself in that situation. So putting yourself in a community, and Daybreak is anonymous. So no one knows who you are. So you can say what you want without feeling judged, and just feeling supported. So, they say the opposite to addiction is connection. And I truly believe that you've got to stay connected.
Yeah, absolutely. What about Fiona? What was one of the biggest, I guess, game changers for you in getting to where you are today?
I was thinking about this a little bit lately. There was multiple things, and I think the more kind of like little points you can have to kind of put your attention on, the more likelihood of success you're going to have. But actually, I just started focusing on caring about Fiona of tomorrow. So I was somehow able in the present moment to go, yeah, well, I can have a drink, but because I've had all of this data of how shit I feel when I wake up in the morning, when I have let myself down and had a drink, when I was actually able to say, you know what, I can suspend what I would like to do in this moment now, because I know how good I'm going to feel tomorrow if I wake up and I haven't had a drink. And that really helped. So I started, present Fiona, who didn't have very good opinion of herself, actually started caring about future Fiona. And in that, I kind of started to build that new identity. So I think for me, it was really just being able to just project just to the next morning. How would I like to feel when I wake up tomorrow? That was a really helpful centering activity to go, I've just got to get through until tomorrow. And then it's a new day. And that was really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about for yourself, Jamie?
For me, a lot of podcasts and audiobooks were huge for me, which I found out about through Daybreak, through other members posting and saying, check out this book or check out this podcast. And one specifically called Alcohol Explained by William Porter. I highly recommend that to anyone who's thinking about reassessing their relationship with alcohol. And I've actually listened to it so many times just for a bit of extra motivation sometimes, but I couldn't unlearn that. I couldn't unlearn that information that I'd received. And I recognized my own drinking patterns and behaviors in that book. And I just couldn't. I think like I first listened to it a few months before I quit. And then when I was continuing to drink after that, it was just in my head. And there's some other, the How I Quit Alcohol podcast is really good. And if you just go searching, you'll find heaps of, they call it Quitlet. So for me, I just got really stuck into that, and that for me was crucial, and I still listen to it sometimes.
Mm. And so I'm hearing all of you kind of saying that, yeah, it really is that connection with other people, but also hearing other people's experiences and maybe taking some things that they've tried that worked for them and testing that out and seeing if that worked for you as well can be particularly helpful. I want to now also talk about, we've spoken about some of the challenges that can come up. I want to shift now to talking about celebrating the wins and the achievements. And obviously I'm talking about the big ones like you guys have shared today, where you're at now, but let's not forget about the small ones too, those everyday ones that, in the harder times you do need to rely on to keep you going, keep that motivation up. So that might be maybe saying no when someone offered you a drink, or Jamie, you were talking before about just noticing how better you feel. So the changes that happen in your mind and your body. So Fiona, I'm going to go back to you. What are some of your wins, big, small, medium, some of the wins that you're either still celebrating now or found were celebrating along the way?
Do you know, some mornings I still wake up and I'm grateful I don't have a hangover. Because it was, I think that was probably one of the biggest things for me, was that feeling of, I'd wake up, my eyes would open and I'd go, oh, I don't have a hangover. Like that, I think that was probably the biggest, actually, was the absence of something, rather than actually, because the things that open up for you physically, you sleep better, your mood's better, you feel better, you want to exercise, you eat better, like there's everything is better. But I think that not feeling of being hungover, like sometimes when I see people hungover now, I just think, oh God, I can't even imagine what that would feel like. So yeah, that for me was a key, was just the gratitude and not feeling crappy.
And Beck, what about for you?
I so resonate with that. And then your slogan behind Hello Sunday Morning just became huge for me because I remember my weekends thinking, what now that I'm not a drinker? And then I kept seeing Hello Sunday Morning, and I'm like, every Sunday morning it hits differently. It's waking up on that Sunday morning feeling good, going to the gym, taking the dog for a walk, going and watching my nephew play soccer. Being present. I have my mum over every Sunday. All those small things that I didn't sometimes have the patience for, I didn't make the time for, like they're so important to me. And big win for me is, I missed out on having children because I was partying so hard, is I'm now a foster carer. So I've got a respite foster carer, a little boy that I have, and that, you know, if there's any reason never to go back to how I was, it's what I can provide for him now as a stable, reliable, dependable person in his life. That's a huge win for me, and yeah, it's been beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. That is beautiful. And just before we jump to answering some of the questions that are coming through, I just want to do a quick round with everybody because I'm sure there's lots of people that have joined us on the webinar today and are thinking, okay, maybe I do want to make a change, and what that actually looks like might be different for everyone. So some people might want to stop drinking completely, and some people might just wanting to be maybe taking a break, like what you started with, Jamie, or cutting back and moderating. But I can guarantee that there's probably some people here thinking, how do I get started? How do I take that next first step? It can be particularly scary and overwhelming to get started. And I just want to know what advice each of you might have for anyone who might be in the thick of it right now. Jamie, I'm going to jump to you first.
Oh, that's a no-brainer for me. It would be to get out your phone and download Daybreak and just post in there. Exactly, it's anonymous, and I think by just committing to sitting down and writing a really honest post that you share, that's the first step. That for me was the first step, and that again triggered everything else. So yeah, I download Daybreak and get stuck into it.
Fiona?
Yeah, look, similarly to that, and I think it's really about being able to assess your relationship with alcohol and having this being able to write or journal and get those thoughts out of our head and actually anonymously just down onto paper, but to have it witnessed by other people just creates some level of, I don't know if it's accountability or being seen or you're not on your own, and to just say, I don't know if I've got a problem or not. I don't know if I need to quit. I don't know if I need to moderate. I don't know if this is normal, but whatever. Just that process of being able to communicate with yourself, but to not be on your own with that, I think is so incredibly powerful for everything, not just alcohol, but because it is such a complex culturally, all of it, the shame and all, even though now today, as opposed to even 13 years ago when I quit there, it's a completely different space that we're in talking about alcohol reduction or sobriety or, like as Jamie said, like the quit lit and all the rest of it. There's the shame of it has gone, like it's not just Alcoholics Anonymous and, you've gone to that. That there is this space for us to be able to have these really honest conversations. But you don't have to have all the answers today either. Like it's such a process to be able to understand your relationship with alcohol and who you are and why you drink and your motivations and your intentions and all the rest of it. Being able to communicate that and have the support of other people, that sense of community is unbelievable. Life-changing, actually.
Yeah. Great, thank you. I'm just conscious of time, so we might start going through some of the questions that are coming through. Thank you very much, everybody who has been sending all of those in. And Beck, I know that I cut you out of that last little round there, so I'm going to throw the first question to you. And it is, how did you get through the days when you really wanted to drink?
It is really uncomfortable sometimes, but I stayed connected. And like Jamie said, whether that is on social media, there is a huge sober group following on all aspects of social media, or jumping in a group like Daybreak. So it's actually just saying, you know what, I'm really struggling today, and having someone go, that's okay, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So that support to get you through that day, Daybreak app is fantastic for that because there'll be that many people that jump on and go, "Hey, we've got this. Let's hang together until that passes."
The power of connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, another question here. What was the hardest part about getting started? Fiona, I'll throw that one to you. What was the hardest part about getting started for you?
It was like ahead of me, all I could see was this desolate wasteland of space. And the thought of what would fill it was quite terrifying. It's like, what do I do? Who am I if I don't drink? So to be able to kind of take that first step and go, well, I'm just going to have to walk through this space, I think that was the hardest. Because I think with anything, once we've properly made a decision, even if we do fall over, we can still keep walking. You fall down 7 times, you get up 8. But to be able to kind of somehow acknowledge in my head that there was this desolate wasteland of space and time ahead of me, that I would look at the evening and I go, what am I going to do tonight? Because I drank every day. What am I going to do tonight? And it took me a long time to learn how to fill that space. So I think that was probably the most terrifying thing. It was like, what do I do and who am I if I'm not drinking?
Yeah. And actually, what you just said, fall down 7 times, get back up 8. Actually, the next question that's just come through is, what if I have tried to change before, but it didn't work? So, Jamie, do you want to take that one? What would you say to someone who said, well, I've tried multiple times and it hasn't worked?
Um, well, then those are just lessons. Every time in each one of those times you've tried and it hasn't worked, you've learnt more. So you've developed that skill even further. And I think if you're still having these thoughts, then deep inside, some part of you wants to make a change. And you've got to listen to that voice. Instead of listening to the people, your friends that you drink with. And that for me, that was a problem because I was listening to the wrong people that were telling me I didn't have a problem. But I knew deep inside, no, I'm not okay with this, and I know I'm better without it. And I just think just to go, just keep dust yourself off and keep trying.
Yeah. And speaking of friends, somebody has also asked the question of how did your friends react when you told them that you were changing your drinking? And Beck, I saw you nodding your head then just then when Jamie was talking about friends. How did your friends react?
Well, the catalyst for change for me was a beautiful friend that said to me, "I love you. I just don't like who you are right now." So if your friends can see you struggling and can see you that you're unpredictable and out of control, quite frankly, they were relieved that I made a change. So you would be surprised, and the right ones stay, and the wrong ones kind of drift away, and that's okay because you find a whole new group of people in this life. So.
Mm. Which is a very brave and courageous thing to do, though.
Mm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, unfortunately, I'm going to have to start wrapping us up a little bit. I feel like we could probably keep answering questions and talking for hours. The good news is there's 7 more webinars to go, so there's plenty of opportunity for the conversation to continue. But I just want to take this opportunity to invite everybody that's come along today to just reflect on the question of what do you want to do next? And I really hope that, I have no doubt actually that hearing our panelists today hopefully has provided some really good information, but also some inspiration to either keep going on your journey or to maybe get started on a potential journey. So yeah, just take a moment to think about that. And if you are looking for a little bit more support along the way, I've just popped up on the screen now. We have a range of tools and resources. You heard the panelists talking about our Daybreak community. So that's our peer support community. We have over 169,000 members there that you can, share your experiences with, or even just read their experiences if you're not quite ready to share. We have a drink tracker tool where you can start paying attention maybe and looking for some patterns with your drinking. We have care navigators who can provide personalised guidance and support. And we also have a structured Hello Change program, which is a self-paced program. Will guide you through setting goals and making long-lasting change. And otherwise, we'd love to see you at our next webinar, which is going to be next month, Wednesday, 29th of April at 12 o'clock. That's going to be facilitated by my colleague, Associate Professor Katinka van der Ven, and she's going to be exploring what to expect in terms of the changes that happen in your body and your mind. And I think a lot of people are very pleasantly surprised just how quickly some of those changes can happen. I'm just going to post in the chat now the link to register for that webinar. So we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much to Fiona, Jamie and Beck, our wonderful expert panelists, for joining us today. Thanks for taking the time, but also just being so open and honest and vulnerable with all of us. As I said, I have no doubt that many people would have found it incredibly useful. And thank you very much to everybody that has joined us here today. And we look forward to seeing you all at the next webinar. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.